This is the Indy 11 Coaches Show, brought to you by your Central Indiana Ford dealers. Now, let's get an inside look at the players, tactics, and opponents with Indy 11 head coach Sean McAuley. Welcome to Season 2 of the Indy 11 Coaches Show. We're in new digs and it's a new season. For those of you that are back and listening again, thank you for watching for a second year. Thank you for being here. For those of you that are new or first-time listeners or watchers, welcome. Once a month, we will sit down with the head man for Indy 11, Sean McAuley, for an extended chat on all things Indy 11, discussing previous results, previewing the month ahead, and branching out our conversations into kind of longer-form chats that we don't really have an opportunity to have otherwise. So welcome back, Sean.
Thank you.
It's been a little while. I think we chatted last time near the end of November. So it's been a little while since we've sat down and done this. I know you had a chance to go back over the pond in December, see some football. Seems kind of like ages ago now, but were you kind of just itching to get back and get started with this preseason?
Yeah, I mean, you want to get started with the preseason, and when you're in preseason, you want to get started with the season. It's sort of non-stop. When you play the first game, you want the second game to come around, because you've either won and you can't wait to get back out on the field, or you've got beat and you want to, prove that you can be better than what you were the week before, and it is really that short term. And in terms of break, I don't think any coach in the world has a break. That's the nature of the job.
Yeah.
So you can't really take a break. You're constantly either working towards bringing new players in, helping old players get resituated, thinking about what moves you need to make in order to balance the squad. And then obviously, like you said, is in football, as we've seen the development of the elite, it's constantly changing. What's sort of fashionable of how to play is probably not in next year's trend. So you're just constantly watching football and watching games and trying to keep a hold on what's going to be successful in your league.
How long did you think about that Rhode Island game? Did you switch off pretty quick, or were you thinking about it for a little while?
Yeah, I think it's important to reflect on it, but then you've got to look forward and straight away think on how you can, if the game was played again, how you would beat them. And like I said when I watched it back, I thought we got bullied a little bit in the first half, so we need to be stronger and physically stronger. And what we're going to look at, and that's my job, to reflect and look at the season as a whole. Rhode Island were a good team. They just didn't get as many wins as they did early on, but I think they only had 7 defeats all season. Any team that only has 7 defeats all season is difficult to beat, and we found them difficult to beat.
Yeah, and I think they showed in the postseason that they could get it done when they needed to as well. So it's going to be a whole different look for everybody, including us. And so let's talk a bit about off-season acquisitions, the moves that the club has made since we last played. I think if you kind of look at it, if I look at it from a macro level, versus the team that played in that Rhode Island game and the 18 and the team we'll have on March 15th, I feel like we're in a stronger position now. How do you feel? Yeah,
obviously we don't want to weaken the team anytime we get the chance to change a few things around. And like I said to the players at the start of this pre-season, when we presented our values of what we want the season to look like and expectations, I thought we were really unlucky when we played at Oakland in the first game of the season. Can you name the team?
I can.
Yeah.
Can I actually try?
Where?
Yannick Odell in goal.
Yep.
Josh O'Brien.
No.
He
came on.
Dispay.
Yep.
Yunus Budati.
Yeah.
Aiden Stanley.
Yeah.
Cam Lindley.
Centre back though. Chapman Page.
Okay, Cam Lindley. Jack Blake. Elliot Collier.
Nope. Gibbo.
It's a struggle.
Seba.
Yep.
Carson Hendelong.
He started.
Yeah.
Okay.
Augie Williams. Coming off the bench.
Yeah.
Josh O'Brien. Robert Molina. I think Diego Sanchez was on the bench as well. So when you look at the start of the season, and I thought we were incredibly unlucky to lose that game. We didn't do very well in a few others after that. But we got beaten that game. I thought we were the better team. The team at the end of the season was better than that one. And the team that developed through the season was better than that starting group. And I thought we did really well in that game. But I think we knew that we needed to get stronger. This off-season, I think we've got a little bit stronger. And some players have left us, to move on and get their careers elsewhere. And then other players have left us, and I think a few have retired or dropped down the division. So we're hoping that the recruits that we've got in will be good for this season. And as we go through the season, we'll constantly be looking to improve as we always should do.
Yeah. This time around, preseason is different because you're not coming in, a week beforehand or whatever it was last year. So, you don't have to worry about learning the names of the staff and kind of like the flow of how things went before here. Would you say that has given you some more freedom to just focus on the football?
Yeah, a little bit. I wouldn't call it freedom. I would call it more of, when you first come in, you've got to prioritize just about everything because, people are looking for answers of what you want to try and achieve and how you want to do it. And then I think now that the staff and all the people that surrounding the team know my expectations of what I want the work to look like. So that's the change. But then you've still got to then, get the players integrated to where they're all understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses. So that's been what we've been doing this pre-season, and I think it's gone really well.
Fitness is always a talking point in the middle of preseason and kind of throughout preseason with guys getting back into shape. As we sit here now, how do you feel about the fitness of the group?
The fitness is okay, and I've said this for the last sort of 10, 15 years. The fitness levels of each player is generally pretty much the same. If any team turns around and says, "Oh, we're the fittest team in the league," and you were to do any fitness testing of every single player in the league, that team wouldn't have 20 players of all their players right at the very top. So everybody's fitness is about the same, and as long as you're working to your maximum capacity, then that's what you've got to accept. You can't ask for more than that. You can't ask for more than their best. And their best might not be as fit as somebody else because that's where they are in their career. But I've generally found that over the last 15 years, players have come back fit. The modern day player is fit. Whether we can increase that fitness, I think we can, but it's more game specific and sharpness and match minute load and that sort of stuff we have to manage. And then it's managing the health and the health status of the player. So my fitness challenges have not really been, and again, like over the last 10, 15 years, generally the players will come back fit. And if they're not in shape, they don't play. So that's why they generally come back in shape. And now it's about keeping them healthy and available to play and durable for the season.
Yeah. Preseason, we're at Grant Park, and it's a great resource to have, especially in the cold months here, to be inside and everything like that. It lets guys be around their families during preseason, and, with the amount of guys with smaller children, that's certainly a plus. On the flip side, it would be awesome to be in 70 degrees and warmth outside and playing on grass. Because, when it gets to 55 degrees here, people are putting down their windows and the general happiness of the entire state goes up. Yeah. You've kind of had the preseason where you're off somewhere warm in MLS. How would you kind of compare and contrast the two?
Everything that you just said, it's fantastic to be able to stay and have people come and integrate themselves into the community for that 6-7 weeks without the pressure of a game. That is phenomenal to do that. And I remember when in the MLS, especially when I was at Minnesota and Portland, to be fair, but we'd be traveling for a month maximum, definitely 2 to 3 weeks. And you are away from your families, and if you're a new player and you're new in the area, you don't really get to know the area until the games get started. So the benefit of being here is great. The negative of that is that we don't get the warm weather training, and we don't get all that, which I'm fine with. We have to train on turf all the time, which can sometimes be a little bit sort of damaging towards the training load and game load. And then the level of opponent is, because you're asking people to come and travel here, or the majority teams now travel away to get games. So, we've struggled to get fixtures against teams of our own standing because them teams are away in the climates of, I think quite a few went to Arizona, a couple went to Florida. So we've played, the MLS Next Pro teams, which has been good because I think the MLS Next Pro, the teams that we've played have really given us a good challenge. And we're fortunate here that the teams around this region with their MLS Next Pro teams, they're doing it the right way. They have adopted I think the best way of developing talent, because what they've done is they've made the MLS Next Pro team an extension of the first team rather than an extension of the academy.
Do you mean like playing the same styles as the first team? Or?
No. Standard of player.
Okay.
Because a couple of years ago, the MLS Next Pro teams were like sort of adopting let's put the under-19s into it because it saved money. And I think a lot of teams have realised, well, the under-19s can't really jump from MLS Next Pro to first team, so let's try and increase the level of competition at that MLS Next Pro standard. And if they want to be available for the first team, we probably have to recruit a better standard of player into MLS Next Pro. So if you look at, Cincinnati, who pay transfer fees to get them in there. The average age of the teams that we played in Chicago was young, because they'd sent their second team to work with the first team at Coachella. But the game against Columbus was a really competitive game. So we're pleased that we got them 2 games that are quite competitive, the Cincinnati and Columbus one. And then we played Madison here, which was a competitive game. The scoreline was 5-0 to us, but I don't think it was a 5-0 game. So we've not really challenged ourselves. We played one game against Pittsburgh and they beat us, and that was like probably a little bit of a shock to us because we'd not played against anybody.
I kind of think to so obviously I'm a Michigan State guy. Tom Izzo always schedules really hard out of conference games. Duke usually doesn't. But those are still 2 teams that kind of go after the national championships. So there's,
Yeah, there's fours and against,
Yeah.
And again, I go back to it, ideally would you like to travel, and there's a reason why the MLS clubs travel. There's a reason why the elite clubs travel. There's a reason why you Man United, Arsenal, they come to America, because they're growing the brand of what it is. In terms of actual performance, whatever you do in pre-season, after the first 3 games of the league, if you've won 3, then you're going, great, we'll keep extending on what we've just done. And if you've lost 3, the pre-season games have actually no relevance whatsoever. So it's going to change as you go through the season anyway. What we just need to make sure is that we don't have a shock the first game of the season and go, this is not something that we were prepared for.
Yeah. I know this is a question you absolutely love every time I ask it. And I haven't asked you a variation of it for a while. So in essence, it's, how do you go about picking the team? We've talked about that before. But I kind of want to preface it with, watching preseason, there's guys that I've watched that I don't think will start, but I kind of look at them and think, how do you keep them out of the team? So you have a really good problem on your hands, and I'll ask you just, I guess, plainly, how will you go about picking the team?
What we've done this year, we've sort of mixed the groups in for the whole pre-season. So we've not done, the first 11 will play this game. It's been a mix of, because like I said to you, I went down that last year of working with the group from day one that I thought was going to start the first game of the season. And that didn't really work for us. So you got to adapt, and that's the big thing now is in coaching is having the ability to adapt, because the managers who are sticking to the same stubborn system that they play every week are, if they don't change and don't adapt, then they're getting criticised for it. And, it's just been my way of doing that anyway. So it's not as if I'm sort of drinking the Kool-Aid of what's going wrong with other clubs who have got stubborn managers, because, if you're succeeding no matter what you're doing, then you should stay with what you're doing. If you're not succeeding, you probably need to look at changing. So what we've done this year is to give everybody a fair chance and to understand that through the season, when it gets into, game 10, 11, 12, these players are probably going to have to play with each other because we'll have injuries, suspensions, maybe a loss of form. So I don't want to keep just a core group, 11, 12, 13, 14 players together who are going to play with each other. Everybody's had the opportunity. So yeah, we've mixed the groups up and we'll continue to do that. We've sort of done a few things in training where we know the relationships of maybe the defensive relationship, the midfield players, the players on the outside, the forward players, they'll all work together. So we're mixing the groups up with a view of creating relationships, knowing that they'll probably be taking the field in the first game of the season.
Yeah, it's cool to see it kind of come along and see guys like get more used to playing with each other. Now that's kind of, definitely on the positive side. If you do look at the negative side, I'd say if you kind of look at a depth chart, so to speak, you get a few injuries or, like you said, suspensions, and the squad does start to look a little thin. And I think you've talked about having a smaller group this year and going for, quality players. How do you kind of think about that if that does become a concern? Is that where academy players play in, or how would you go about that?
Academy players come into the equation. We might enter the loan market, and during pre-season you might have seen as well that players will play in different positions. So in order to maybe not dip into the loan market or not give the opportunity to an academy player who's not ready for it, because that can do damage to the academy player as well. We've got a few players that we know are multifunctional and can play in different positions if need be, if the squad got thin in terms of injuries. So we've got a few that can do that, so I'm really pleased about that. We've also played multiple systems of play, within the same style of play of how we want to play. We want to play a fast attacking style of football to try and score goals. And we've done that in, I think, 3 systems of play this year, which will give us that opportunity to change if we run into the squad being lighter because of injuries.
To touch on academy a bit more, obviously, like Logan earned his spot last year and then earned subsequent minutes from that, and he continues to get better, but he's competing against top professionals now. If you think, from an outside perspective, I think of him as a right wing back because that's where he played a lot last year. He's competing with Bruno, League One Defender of the Year, and maybe Hayden White, who, with his physicality, crossing ability, those are real challenges for Logan to compete with. So, he's in the midfield as well. We know the names in that group he's got to compete with as well. So that's just, I don't even know if there's a question there, but it's kind of like one thing I think about is this academy kid that's growing and growing. You want him to keep doing that, but he's got a lot to work with in there, a lot to compete against.
So it's not a question, is it?
No, it's
so
not.
Do you want me to
what
ask?
Are your thoughts
I'll ask you the question. Having competition like that, will it make him better?
Yeah.
Well, there you go then. You've answered it.
Okay.
It's pretty simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's just got to rise to the challenge, and tomorrow he's going to play left back in a game that we've arranged between ourselves. Because Aidan Stanley's out injured for a show. He's got an ankle. We don't want to have too much time on the turf with Aidan because he rolled his ankle on it yesterday, so he will play left back. So there's the answer to your question. You didn't have him as a left back on your bingo card, did you? Yeah, well there you go.
No,
he's going to play left back tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, but the standard of the recruits that we've got in, the positions that we're playing is quite high. If he gets in, it means he's better than them. That means it's good for the club.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Maverick and Ryan Hunsucker are the 2 players that are on academy contract this year. Are there any other names that fans should kind of be watching if they turn their eyes to the academy throughout the season?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, every single academy player, other than one, maybe a couple more in younger age. At this moment in time, we've got one who's probably good enough to join, and Maverick and Ryan, but he's an international, so we can't get him registered because it's international transfer certificates or a pass we need, and he's decided now to go to college, which is the right route for him, and we'll keep in touch with how his progress does. In my opinion, every player that's in the academy should have the pathway to the first team. They have to make that path theirs. We can't guide them. We can guide them. We can't force them through and take it. They should be making their own way to get through to it. So again, in my opinion, every player should sign an academy first team homegrown contract, whatever you want to call it. The problem I have with that is people like yourself then put our squad down and we look as though we've got a squad of 35 and we know that only 20 are going to play. So it's a little bit disheartening for the players who don't get that contract, but we've also got to be reflective of we need to make sure that everybody understands what these players' contracts are. So Maverick and Ryan, likelihood, can be on the bench for us, but it'd be very difficult, like you said, with Logan, for like some Maverick, who's a centre-back, central midfield player, to play in front of all the players that we've got. So realistically, is he part of the squad? If we want to boost the numbers of the squad and say that we've got a really deep squad, then yeah, he's part of it. If we say, is he going to play? We'll probably say it's going to be very difficult for him to. And that's why we've got to be careful what we do when we start talking about academy contracts and academy numbers, because people believe then that you've got a squad of 30 and you should be winning the league. But what we do need to do is make sure that we do try and sign as many as we can from the academy, because I believe it's a really important part of the club. And if you look at the successful youth developers in this league, which are Louisville, because they've signed players for money, sold players for money. Orange County, sold players. And I would look at, I think Sacramento even sold players. I would look at that being the model of, we need to get them, sign them, get them in the team, move them on. Because that's benefits everybody. Yeah. And that's what the successful youth development teams and programs look like. We need to get to that level first. Not going down the road of saying, oh, we've signed 20, but nobody's ever done anything. Yeah. And I think we've done that in the past.
Right. Cool. That was good. Good
productive. You know, I just look at like I said, Diego Sanchez signed before I got here, and Diego wasn't ready for first team football, but we signed him, and he wasn't ready. So you know, we did a good thing by Diego that we put him onto a degree program, so he's going to get his education. And that was a big thing that I made sure that every young player that signs, we need to make sure that we get them the education through the league's programming. So Logan's going to do a degree. I don't know what he said he was going to do it in. I think maybe business and marketing, I think. Okay. I don't know what Diego's doing, but before he left, we made sure that he signed up for the degree course, because I think we just signed him for numbers. And that's not, I don't think that's got any sort of humanistic welfare approach to player development. Yeah. And I think there's got to be a level of that.
Yeah, for any parties involved, because I mean, he probably would have loved to be playing 90 minutes every single week, but it wasn't, realistic. And
he wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of just one thing with American soccer being young in general too, compared to across the pond stuff, and the way that it's looked at over there and the way it's looked at here has developed a lot, even in the time that it's been around, 25, 35 years.
Well, the league's been 30 years old, but the MLS, they're doing a great job. Because they're selling players at 16, 17, 18. Yeah. You look at Philly Union, they're selling players for a big, big profit. Now, it might not be a profit to the whole investment that they've made in it, but they're able to continue that pathway of getting them young, training them, playing them, selling them. And that's really good for the country, for the league, for everybody, that, there are some players that need to stay in America to fulfill their potential in the career, and there's some players that need to go and play somewhere else. That happens the world over. And I think over probably last 5 to 10 years, there's been an interest in the American player, and now there's a real interest in the young American players who are playing in MLS to go and sign for these big European clubs, which is obviously, again, helping the player and helping the club and it helping grow the league. And for us, our next step is to be able to play the next young player and have interest from the other clubs. Like Widner went to LA, and his brother went to Benfica B, and I think they sold another one left back to maybe Villarreal.
And Corcoran from Birmingham that went to Nashville.
Right, okay, there's another one, yeah. And then you've got the guys from Orange County who they sold to a Dutch team, I think it was.
It's 7 figures, close to it, yeah.
So that's where, if we were to say crystal ball and we're mirroring what the MLS has been doing, and you're saying the game's growing in the US, and it is, and we're all now coming into this understanding of what the model looks like, in 5 to 10 years' time, we should have players that we have that we can play and sell.
Yeah, and talking about it the way we are, and thinking, I know you guys are thinking about that way more than everybody else is, but it sets a good foundation.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And I think just us having that conversation, people hearing this too will start to think about it a little bit different too.
Yeah,
so I think that's a good thing.
Good.
Looking towards the season, I'll say it so you don't have to. First week, bye week sucks. It takes an off weekend away for you guys during the season. It's kind of like everybody's played the first season, the excitement's there. Oh, actually, we play next week, so it kind of stinks. How will you use that to make your team better for the first time you play?
Well, it gives a good chance to watch the opposition, because the first game for everybody, nobody really can get a sense of what they're doing. You might get some video of the last pre-season game, but then, are they going to show what they're going to do in the first game of the season? So we get to see them, in sort of real action. So we get to prepare that. What we do know about Miami is, and I said this to the players, they've got 3 players that I've worked with before. The goalkeeper I worked with in the All-Star team when we played Bayern Munich.
Okay.
So he's not bad. That was in 2014 against Bayern, Pep's Bayern. And I've got Sebastian Blanco, who's, I think, been in 2 MLS Cup finals. And then we've got Lucas Milano, who I had at Portland as well, who we signed for $5 million, and we won MLS Cup with him. So they're 3 players that I know quite well. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be Miami of last year. So that gives us the advantage, I've seen them play and seen how they interact and see what type of player they've got, that can surround them. But they've made some good off-season additions, and we'll see how they go.
Do you think it's a good thing, too, that they won't have seen us play?
Yeah, probably.
Any surprises up your sleeve?
No, but like I said, the players that they've signed are probably a little bit of a statement to say we're not going to go and do what we did last year, which is, they had a really poor record last year. So I know, like I said, 3 of them, 2 of them really well that I worked with for a couple of years each. And again, that would have been, we signed him for $5 million, Lucas Milano. That's probably 10 years ago. And Sebastian Blanco left the league probably 2 or 3 years ago, went back to Argentina, and now he's come back to Miami. So we all know what Seba can do. I know what Lucas is capable of, so what both of them are capable of. And then they've gone and signed the experienced goalkeeper, which, is never a bad thing to have an old head at the back of the team, that can see everything and make saves, which we know he can do because he's done it for years in the MLS.
Yeah. When you talk about $5 million, even if it was a little while ago, there's not many guys connected to numbers like that in this league.
No, well, it's one of them, so it was $5 million 10 years ago. So what's he worth now? 50.
Inflation, right? Yeah.
Or he's. I think he'll probably be. We signed 10 years ago. So 22. He might be 32-year-old. Can't remember. Yeah, I'd have to look it up. But he's not finishing his career. That's for sure. So Lucas and Seba, it'd be good to catch up with them too, because I had a really good relationship when they both played at Portland Timbers.
Cool. Hopefully it'll be after a win after 90 minutes.
Yeah.
I know your focus is on Miami. I do want to ask you just briefly about Lexington being a new face in the league this year, and kind of weird that they're probably the second closest team to us, but we'll only play them once. Just kind of a quick word about what we see when you look at them.
The quick word is investment. If you look at what they've done, they've invested unbelievably heavily in, recruiting, stadium, training ground. They've done the full lot, and I think, from what I understand, they want to try and be contenders within 5 years. And looking at the way that they're investing in the group and the whole club, it wouldn't surprise me if they are, like a Rhode Island who have done the same thing. If they're in that conversation, we've got a tough game against them. We know we have, but we'll get through week 1 first before we start really diving in and looking at them. But if you look at the signings that they've made really good signings. Spent the money, got the players in with experience, USL experience as well, which I think is important. And I think they'll be okay.
Obviously a familiar name there is Cam Lancaster. Indy fans know him a little too well from his days in Louisville.
Speedy Williams is a great signing for him.
Yeah.
Because I think he's won it 3 times.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's ever lost. Yeah.
So he's a multiple winner of the main competition.
Right.
And then they went out and I think spent quite a bit of money on centre defenders, which, if you can get your good central midfield player, you've got a decent forward and 2 centre backs, you're off on your way to building a solid foundation. They'll be okay. But again, money doesn't score a goal. It helps you buy somebody to score a goal. but it doesn't score the goal, and you've got to make sure that all of them players can sort of work together and balance together and join it all together. And you know, the coach is a good coach, so he's probably got the ability to do that, but you just have to wait and see.
Yeah. And then that'll lead us to our home opener on March 29th, which you can get tickets for at Indy11.com right now. Back in front of the home fans, I guess just how excited are you to kind of start a campaign at home for 2025?
I mean, you know, hope we give them something to shout about, because we were really poor at home last season, especially at the start. So we're going to go out and we're going to make sure that we give everything we possibly can to get a result, because I think the fans deserve it. Off season, fans are incredible. I think we can say that's the one constant that everybody understands, that when you see Indy 11, you know, maybe we've not made the playoffs. I think we haven't made it more than 2 years in a row, you know, but the one constant that they're always saying about Indy 11 is the supporters are great. So what happens at this club is there might be a lot of changes everywhere else, or, you know, things move in different directions, but the one constant is the supporters, and we need to make sure we're as consistent as them with our performances, especially at home, and we try and get some wins.
You've said it internally. I think you've said it pretty, you know, publicly too, that to improve on last year, it's a tough task. You have to finish top 3 in the East and get to the final of the U.S. Open Cup, and then you've got the Jägermeister Cup in there as well. Is it that simple? Is it anything else as a failure, or how will you kind of gauge the success of this season?
I think there's a really good book I just read, and it talked about success and failure. And if any club bases it just on results, then they're going to fail. You know, you've got to look at the whole picture of you know, how's the club developing, how's the team developing, what's the future, always sort of planning ahead. But if we were to get to the Open Cup final, we'd try and win it. And if we were to get into the top 4 again, or the top 3 would be an improvement, it gives us a good chance to win it. And we're entering the Jägermeister Cup, which, like I said about the Open Cup last year, we want to go and try and win it. And I think the club needs to try and win a trophy. And I'm not saying we've been starved of success at all, you know, because the club's really successful in a lot of other areas as well. But we haven't really had that sustained success on the field. And I said this about Colorado winning it. Not many people thought they could win it, but they've made the playoffs the last 4 years in a row, and they've hosted a playoff final. So I would say they're in a decent position at the end of last season, having been in the playoffs the previous 4 and hosted a conference final, that they're in a decent position to say, yeah, you know what, we've got a chance here. And I'm not saying we're not there, but the evidence is we've not won many playoff games. That's the next thing we need to do. We need to sort of get in the playoffs, then win a playoff game. And then that will be successful, you know. But I do think we need to, the trophies that are up for us, especially the Jägermeister Cup, we've got to try and go for them, because we need to give the supporters some silverware.
Yeah, and I think they'd be really, really excited for that. Any other thoughts from you before we sign off episode 1 of season 2?
No, obviously by the time we next speak, we'll see Liverpool crowned as the champions of the Carabao Cup, and we will see Celtic crowned as the champions of Scotland.
Okay.
Anything to say on that?
Nope. Got nothing.
All right, good. No, I hope Newcastle do win, and obviously Celtic's going to beat Rangers on the same day.
That's
fine.
in
a couple of weeks.
It's okay with me.
Okay.
Killy's not in the title shot and haven't been for a long time. So
No.
Okay, that does it for episode 1. Don't forget, home and away kits are available now on shop.indy11.com. Get your tickets for the home opener as soon as you can and be there on March 29th. Make sure you watch on YouTube if you're only listening to this, and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next time.
This is the Indy 11 Coaches Show, brought to you by your Central Indiana Ford dealers. Be sure to like and follow this podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening. To watch the video version of this podcast, subscribe to the Indy 11 YouTube channel.